Okay. So today for our reading in the Parinama method, let's see, we're at page 228. And what do we have in store today? When I was kind of like whatever is setting up, I thought like, wow, I wonder if I'm going to be making more fun of yoga influencers. I was like, well, it seems like it's possible, with the topic at hand, but who knows? We'll see what comes up here. But the topic today, and let's see, we're talking about, so we're in the interruptions and stressors of the sixth hub. And in the last reading that I did, I talked a bit more about like what an interruption and a stressor is and how it relates to trauma and the notion of trauma, what trauma is, and kind of why I chose like very specific terminology, specifically for its descriptiveness. Yeah. So here we are in the sixth hub. And one of the things too that I was thinking about with this is that I think the techniques and exercises wind up being kind of a catch-all for some of the stuff that I feel is kind of a little like semi-absent. And in this chapter, I don't even know that it's semi-absent. I just think it's like easy to kind of pass through kind of quickly. Yeah, I don't even know if that's even true, but anyway, so once we get to the techniques and exercises, we'll be able to do an audit. But I think one of the things about it is that it's, I think about how much I relish the opportunity to have discussions about this, and hear input. I think one of the things I really enjoyed about the creation of the book was how collaborative it is. And for me right now, in my personal process with this is, and this actually just occurred to me yesterday, was the necessity of this process being very solo. And I kind of just, if anything, just kind of point to this as there is an aspect to this which requires like almost what I'd call like a zero pointing, which is like kind of shedding some contextual stuff that are like belief systems about like and acceptances about how things work. And in order to do that, um, kind of the way that I'm doing it right now, it really requires like, in India, like the notion of like renunciates. And then you have, I mean, one of the things is like you have these themes, that are, universal really, which is that kind of the notion of withdrawal in order to kind of like achieve sort of a greater level of insight. And, and I think some of that withdrawal can have to do with like the things that we expose ourselves to, specifically people. Specifically people, so one of the things that I'll point to here too is that specifically people who are using us from the like as adaptation, like mirrors. So they're using us to try, they're kind of trying to force our hand to validate their notions, like their like in the tangle, their reflexes, their beliefs. And a lot of times it's like the participation part of that. And I think like the removal from these dynamics helps like build the sense of self. And then even if there's the chance for like re-entry into some of these dynamics, usually not desired or necessary, right? Let's be honest. But in matters of family and stuff like that, it can be, that can be a whole thing. But yeah, okay. I kind of lost track of where I was going with that. So Yeah. It's so right now for me, it's Sunday morning. And, one of my things about, like, showing up for this every day is showing up for it every day. And, part of that is just being as I am. So, part of the thing, like the notion of devotion and love is showing up regardless of kind of like the state you're in terms of, to represent your commitment to whatever it is you're doing. So, that's what I'm doing right now. Um, okay. I'm gonna start reading. We'll see what comes up. We'll see what's in here. So, bad data, garbage in, garbage out. Funny thing is, when I'm reading this, recognize this header as being kind of like not exactly in my voice. It's not really how I'd phrase something, but it was something my editor contributed, and I kind of just really love my editor. And so it was from my editor had been at another stage in her life, had been like an editor for like tech and like professional magazines, a um so, and she really liked this phrase, and I was like, yeah, I love it. And she's so reluctant to like really weigh in on anything, that I think if anything it's just a little like kind of thing that I love, is that I see that's her thing. Because the thing with bad data, like garbage in, garbage out, for those of you who are familiar with like data management, like specifically like, yeah, data management systems, is that if you put bad stuff in any, because usually what you're doing is you're putting raw data into a system, and then you're gathering insights from like the macro trends in it. So you're like looking at how it all works together. And so if the data that goes in the like individual sense or in any sense isn't great, the macro trends are useless. So that's where that comes from. But so yeah, I don't know. We'll see if this applies to this. But anyway, I love you, Allison. I love you, Allison. And I just want to give a shout out to Allison being kind of one of the most like the really magical aspects of this kind of process, which is and I've mentioned this before, I'll mention it again, why not, is that I didn't know how to write a book. The first manuscript I sent to Allison was literally like a pile of chaos that I had worked fastidiously on for a significant amount of time, not knowing anything about like how of anything. And that the reason I bring this up is that like anything that you feel, if you're, as you have arising notions of like, this is a thing I'd like to do, is that if there's this thing that's like, yeah, but I don't know how to do it. I know this is nuts, but if there's a strong enough feeling that it's something that you want to do, it's not necessarily that you will be the person who does it. It's just that you'll be the captain of the ship of the project. And so, like, Allison taught me how to write a book, like, quite frankly. I mean, that's one of the things, is that in terms of what this process was like for me. And that meant a lot of things. There was some really practical things that had to do with, like, how this works, in very mechanical ways, but also in very, like, sort of, like, Sherpa spirit guide kind of stuff, which, like, teaching me about how to, like, occupy my voice, how to like what, because one thing I'll point to, and this is like a little bit fifth hub, but like figuring out, for me, I have a tendency, or had a tendency rather, that was very strong, which would be to like triangulate. And it's not the worst thing in the world. I guess to a certain extent I still do it, but not really to the extent that I used to, which is to kind of gauge the person and like tune in to them. And so it was like adjusting what I was saying, which is a very adapted thing to do to the extent that I was doing it. But anyway, for later another conversation. And then you're writing a book, and it's like, well, how do I talk? Like, how do I communicate without knowing who's reading it? And then that brings up a whole other notion of, well, am I talking to am I protecting myself against criticism, which was what I was doing? So it's like being really defensive. So in, the early writings, there was so much research. So any one point would have like 3 citations, and without realizing it was like an embodiment of defensiveness against someone saying that my opinion was wrong, and that the process of writing this and working with Allison and the method itself really was to grow strong enough that to say like this, like me saying it and positioning it here is like enough, and its defensibleness is like its defensibleness. It's like it's either, it either resonates or it doesn't, and it's like I'm not trying to like sell any of this. Like I'm not trying to sell these ideas to you like that, and that was kind of the thing, where it was like, yeah, I'm not running for mayor here. I'm putting this out there. I'm putting this forward because if it resonates with you, you're going to have as much of a sort of a thirst, hunger, appetite for it as I did in my searching it out and going through this process. So that's who I would be talking to, is somebody that would be, you know, in that camp. I'm not trying to fight anyone. I mean, it's like I'm totally willing to have a conversation with anyone about almost, like anything, but it's not a conversation when somebody is just really trying to like grapple and overtake you, and I'm not interested in that exercise. I'm not trying to win. I already won. I already won. Oh, I already won. Yeah, it's a good reason to read the book. I know a thing. Yeah, I mean, listen, there's some kind of hidden doors in here that'll like break you through, and they're not me. They're for you. Like they're really in this exploration. I think one of the things I appreciate about this isn't me prescribing anything. This is me pointing. I hope, like pointing at things that are trying to activate curiosity and introspection, not a prescription of what this is, because for every single individual who reads this, something different happens. Who contemplates this, something different happens, because the framework, actually this will work really well into what we're about to talk about. Yeah, it's going to be different for everyone. So I'm actually going to start reading, because that actually is a good segue. So okay, garbage in, garbage out. So censorship is often intended to keep bad information away from children. So restricting high voltage images of violence, pornography, and explicit language support children's healthy development. That is just a fact. However, keeping them from seeing people who hold different views, this has actually become more topical since this has been written. My goodness. However, keeping them from seeing people who hold different views or lead different lives from theirs is not helpful for sixth hub development. Yeah, like it's interesting. Like we didn't really have as like sort of like when this was written, the kind of the erasure quality, the erasure, the very frontal erasure that we have right now, like the things with drag shows. I mean, my God. Okay. For adults, censorship effectively eliminates the introduction of information into our conscious and subconscious library and supports limited thinking and biases, stifling creative capacity. Here, I discuss the interruptions that occur when our ability to add information to our internal library is controlled and blocked. We can also be inundated with bad information that sneaks in and resides below the subconscious layer of our psyche, controlling our perception from just slightly beyond our conscious grasp. Well, not for long. We can, I mean, it's just below, which means, like, we can grasp it, but when it's operating there, it's very effective in controlling our lives. You know, I was just thinking, I was really impressed with how well I can read. It's like yeah. Yeah, I remember that, like, in school, like, when I was called upon, I was like, Bring it, like, this is my time to shine. This is might be why like, this might be why I do this, like, because 'cause I'm like, I wanna show off this, like, thing. I mean, yeah, there's obviously been some inconsistencies. Some days are better than others, but yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah, okay, so here's the thing, I don't know if, like I think I should probably keep reading because I, like, spoiler alert all the time with this, where I, like, speak to it once it comes up and it turns out to be, in the next passage, which I guess kinda speaks on some level to, like, a level of, I don't know, I got, like, consistency or whatever, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about social programming, ads, images, and power. Boom. Okay, so in the 1910s, American advertising pioneer Claude Hopkins said of his industry, "We're not known, but we control what people all across America want to do." So, over the next 100 years or so, marketers perfected the craft of creating needs that require their products. For example, Listerine influenced the public about the so called stigma of bad breath halitosis. It worked. A medical tasting mouthwash seemed like the only suitable option to combat the newly imagined horror. Likewise, the early success of selling cigarettes to women came from ad campaigns touting the product's support in maintaining a so called healthy weight. Yeah. I mean, the thing I think one of the things with this is, like, pointing to this. So, it's, like, 1910, the advertising pioneer saying, "We're not known, but we control what people across America wanna do." And so to talk about, so say, like, Listerine and, halitosis being sort of summoned forward as a social horror so that you would tolerate, like, medicinal, like, really, I mean, like, Listerine, the original one that was, like, yellow was, like, like, post-medicinal. It was so bad, right? I mean, if you remember, you remember. It was, like, yeah, it was, like, absolutely terrible. But the shame. So we look at it's like you look at this, and then likewise, like with cigarettes that, early on were sold as, like, weight loss or healthy weight maintenance. Um, you just look, I mean, like, here, like, in the context of, like, here what we're doing, which is the conscious reclamation of these internal divisions, that how we become, like, this kind of, like, wokeness, this awokenness of, like, once where our shame is, like, once we really understand what chronic shame is and really own the sense that there's just nothing wrong with you. So it's like everything is seen through that lens. It's like there's nothing wrong with me. Like, if you're telling me there's something is, that's a red flag. If you're telling me there's something about me I need to fix, that's the red flag. I'm not the red flag. Like, this is like, and this is kind of and this is where even when we talk about teasing open the tangle, which is like the reflex into beliefs forming reality, and then that gets projected into the world and the world reflects it back, kind of, that whole notion is that with the chronic feeling of just there's always something about me that, my worth is always sort of like tenuous, precarious, whatever. And also that, that fear, if I have sort of like the chronic version of like ongoing vigilance, that I'm always looking out for something, these the power of any sort of like it's like it's easier to create divisiveness internally, like with advertising, to be like, oh, you could like relieve some of this anxiety, or at least be doing an activity that signals to myself that I'm like taking action to try to like do something about this. And this is where action is also comes into play. And I don't know if I'm going to talk about this that much. Let's see what comes up in the next two paragraphs, because there's something to be said in this that has to do with power. And the one thing I'll say that has to do with power is that power is, one of my teachers a long time ago now, like 20 years ago, meditation teacher, had talked about how the actually, like, I'll put this in like simple, I'll put it this way here, which is that, their belief that you have to do more to get more is like, once we've power, we do less and get more, which is like, okay, this seems kind of like, but the analogy he used was like royalty that like kind of oversees its court, that there's like your power, like once you actually re-inhabit and re-own your power, like there's an arising phenomenon coming from that is, yeah, I probably shouldn't have talked about that just yet. So I'm gonna read. So the next paragraph is: social media is essentially an advertising platform that gained astronomical stock market valuations by effectively harvesting human attention. So companies want your eyeballs on their messages. When advertising targets our subconscious biases and pushes the buttons of our adaptations, it can shift our feelings, thoughts, and behavior. So for most people, social beauty standards like body size and shape, skin tone, and hair are bound up in an emotionally loaded tangle with worthiness of love and acceptance. Cultural beauty standards tend to make our appearance an asset that appreciates over time, reducing our lives to a constant competition as a commodity in a market full of options. But you are not a commodity. There is only one of you, and you're priceless. Lining up for the societal meat market will take your power away and distort your relationship with yourself. Conventional beauty and attractiveness are not related to worthiness of love and acceptance. They are related to power. We often conflate the attention attractiveness receives with worthiness. Again, our appearance and the social judgment applied to it is about power, not love. When we can recognize the lunacy of beauty and attractiveness being a depreciating asset and identify it instead as power that tends to diminish as our insight and wisdom grow, we can treat it accordingly and use it rather than be used by it. Yeah. And, and as this came up in, I think, one of the yesterday or previous reading, is that like what beauty is like it's emanating from inside of you. It's a quality. And I mean, of course, there's like the power aspect of, of beauty. It gives power. I think one of the things that I realized when I was writing the book, and it was like, deep in COVID, I lived a block or two blocks away from Newbury Street, which is like the shopping fashion street of Boston. But it was COVID, so I had this free pass, and I was like basically like wandering the streets, like I was wandering the streets in like rags, and like there was this one shirt that I just would not like, give up that had this, like, kind of, like, it wasn't a state, it's like when you've had oil on a shirt and it's like, ba-boom, like, that you've got that for, like, and it was kinda like, and I was just really not like, I was just in this other state. I was really, like, pretty fucking happy, honestly. Um, it's really good, but, and terrified, like, it was kinda cool, very, like, in the abyss, but loving the ride. And I remember I went into a store and I realized, like, that my ability to connect with a person, I could just see that, like, I was sort of invisible to them because I just had stepped outside of, like, looking like I belonged to society. I mean, I'm laughing. It's not funny, but it's also funny. I mean, this is a parallax situation, depending on how you're looking at it. And that, like, in moments like that, it's understanding that it's like your power in terms of, like, so if I'd wanted to charm that person, if I'd wanted, like, last night I went to Sweet Green, the salad place, and, like, the guy gave me, like, a free salad and bread, right? And, in my state with my grease stained shirt, like, that power, it's just a power, and it's like a currency, it's like a subtlety, and it's like that your charm actually works on people. So that is, like, I'm not diminishing that, and because I think it to be like, like, "You're beautiful no matter what." Um, like, yeah, you're beautiful no matter what. Like, but the thing is, like, you're powerful, not like your power, like, power, this very specific type of power is just a thing, you know? Like, even I even had something that was kind of revolting to me personally. I was in a meeting, I don't wanna give too many details about this, but I was in a meeting and I found myself, like, really just like, without conscious oversight of it, it was with a man, um, and I found myself just really leaning into being very, like, feminine, very focused on, like, sort of cuteness and charmingness because I knew that was going to, like, bend the outcome, so it's just easier for me, and when I hung up, I was like, "Ooh," it was a Zoom meeting or whatever, like, and it's just like, "Oh, fuck, that's a thing." I mean, even at my, like, ripe old age, it's there's still a little juice left in the squeeze. But, like, that thing about, like, what that power is, and that there are some people who have access to it by choice, and there are some people who, um, it's like it's another thing just to be conscious of, and to realize, like, I think one of the things to realize is that the conflation of beauty with worth versus understanding it's a matter of power is a place where even people who benefit from it gain, or experience, sort of a tax on their own sense of self as a result of it. So it's not to say it's not, like, easier, in a certain sense, but as long as, like, we're kind of co-opting in on the notion that, like, physical appearance is representative of, like, some type of, like, virtue or conventional appearance, but going back to, like, what is beauty? I mean, it's like, I mean, it's kinda one of those things, like, you really know it when you see it, and, I don't know about where you live. I live in a place where there's a lot of, like, physically beautiful people, and some of them are, like, kind of just really sort of unattractive in terms of their, like, carriage and their behavior. Um, and there's some that are just, like, emanating this kind of quality that's just like, whew, like, you just stop and it's like, "Woo!" Like, I sit outside I eat outside of the cafe that's near this yoga studio, and it's like to watch people walk by, and it's, who are, like, in their little yoga kits and stuff, and and it's like it's like many of them sort of like objectively sort of like similar looking, but there's qualities, there's this kind of thing, and I think most people can relate to seeing that. Mira. Key. I'm so excited. Oh my gosh. Oh. I love you so much. I love you so much. Oh my gosh. So, yeah, I thought this was gonna be more about social media. It's not, I mean, I guess maybe like what was the thing here? Oh, attention. Yeah, we could talk about that. You know, that's not what's coming up. It's not where the kite is going today. So when women on my oh, this is kind of a good one. So when women on my teams have relied on their looks and the power of their flirtation skills to win deals, I advise them that learning how to negotiate masterfully to occupy personal power and build connections is essential for career longevity. So although attractiveness opens doors easily and creates initial interest, it doesn't build long-term relationships, business relationships rather. I'm gonna talk more to this. There's like I think this would benefit from more context. So unfortunately, the same appeal that opens doors often blocks the elevator for anyone who doesn't know how to transition charm and appeal into credibility and respect. This is like really about women and like one of the really um impossible, near impossible, like the incredibly challenging dynamics that women face in business, in life, in life. Um, so decoupling appearance and worthiness is a good first step towards loosening the inner bind. Yeah, I mean, I think when there's some there like I feel like the tone in that is a little retro for me. And it's almost like kind of reading from a diary of a different perspective that I've had, um, but where it holds true in the sense that it is like, yeah, and like the kind of the deep the sort of broader reality of this is that for women in, business development, which is, what I did, um, when you're working deals, the disadvantage of being a woman is considerable, for the simple reason that it's like, it's like just having a woman in the room like makes everything all of a sudden like sort of like less fun. It's like, oh, we can't talk about the stuff we want to, or it's like we have to, and this isn't even, this is just perception, because there's oftentimes, like men that don't want to be part of some of these conversations that happen that can be like pretty intense. Um, when you talk about like, when you talk about like misogyny and sexism, that it's, the locker room talk kind of stuff, which is like really, really basic. It's really basic, but it's also like sad and gross. It's not that funny. I think one of the things is like, I remember I was at this, I don't know if I should tell this story. I was at a dinner with a male executive team that I was the sole woman, and I won't give the specifics. It was all like young MBA, sort of like handsome white guys in their, mid-30s. Okay, let's come back. And so I remember they were telling these stories like about, like that were like really about sex. They're just about like, kind of like, and I just was like, and they were kind of like, I'll bet this is like a lot for you. There's some kind of illusion at some point that was like, yeah, look, see, this is what guys talk about. And I was like, this isn't even that. It's not that it's like it's lacking. I was like, I can blow you out of the park. Like you're like it's so much grosser and so much funnier. It's just more. I think more the thing that is shocking is how representative and, of a worldview that it represents, and um, how it's like there's, like, a reconciliation that needs to happen to figure out, like, how do I exist in this? And so, it's like, how to, and there's a lot more that is good. I mean, I could go on for probably infinite eternities. There's probably parallel universes of me talking about this for the rest of eternity. It's probably like spinning the whatever it's called, like the other simulations or something. But the point I want to make is that, and this is the crass, content warning or whatever. It's like about to, is that, in business, that if for if you're going to rely on being flirty to win access and entry, one of the things is you're walking a tightrope, because if the person that you're flirting with decides to call you out on it, in the sense of making a move on you, um, which is not unusual. And, it's like, it's like, and you're basically at this kind of like Sophie's choice, which is that, and not to say this doesn't happen without being flirty. So this is a whole other thing. I want to be really kind of mindful of this. This happens anyway. But as far as, God, I feel like really like maybe I shouldn't talk about this stuff here, because I'm not getting into the right level of like nuance on this. Yeah. I really, I honestly, I think that, yeah, yeah, I think I'll stop talking about it. It's a bigger conversation, and I think that one of the things that if I really speak openly about how I feel about this, it's a much larger conversation. And I do speak openly about it, but just in like a different space than this one. But yeah, yeah, this is very specifically about women and work, and I would extend that to anyone who is certainly Black folks, certainly, um, LGBTQA plus, like, certainly, certainly, like, different, like, non-Christian religious affiliations. So, yeah. Yeah, it's a larger topic. It seems like a little bit off topic too, which is interesting. I think that this one has like a couple things that are squeezed in here. And there's like a follow-up in the techniques and exercises, which gets into um sort of like it's like social media as it is. I really am very not so like the position that I have on this is like, there's kind of like, this is how like shame, like the shaming thing is like, the thing about shaming is it's like everything that you do that you enjoy is like you're not supposed to do it. And like so like, or to say like, well, everything in moderation, right? It's like nothing can ever be like, yeah, this is just enjoyable. There needs to be this like parental, it's like the parental warning on it. It's like, well, I love chocolate cake, but you can't have it every day. It's like, I'm a fucking like, we're adults, and even like it's just, and even just anything, it's like social media, oh, it's bad. Like anything that you enjoy, and watch for that. It's just, there's just a shaming of anything that is like, it's like, it's lazy. You should probably be doing something. What? Fucking building the empire? I mean, like, come on. The it's I mean, like, this thing is, like, you are doing something. you're like watching stuff and enjoying it, the thing about that, there's that, like, the shame, it's like, it's like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, or it's like, I mean, I just think it's like, I mean, please tell me, find the thing that is actually a like, a pleasure thing to do that doesn't have some type of, sort of, like, warning on it. It's like protection of, like, "Oh, don't let this run amok. It'll, too much is too," I'm being cool by saying that you can even just do a little bit of it and just be careful about your, not overdoing it, kind of thing. Like that thing of, like, the cool people are the ones that are like, "Well, in moderation." It's like, "Wow, that's the cool teacher." And it's like, what the fuck is that? It's like, try to say, just, like, enjoy dessert, enjoy sitting around, just enjoy sitting around, stay on TikTok for an entire day, like, I don't know, just try, like, without having to, like, introduce the balancing caveat of, like, the counter shaming. So, for social media, I guess it's social programming. My reading comprehension, I was just praising myself on my reading ability, but I think by my comprehension, which is another side of that, gets a low mark, because it's social programming adds images and power. Yeah, somebody give me a demerit on that one. I totally missed that. I totally missed that until just right now, which includes social media. We'll get into social media and techniques and exercise. I do remember that. I'm pretty sure it's still in there. So, yeah. God. Yeah. Sixth hub. I love that I was just, like, really relishing in my reading. It's just more like than my reading. Like, I was really excited that I could just, like, read, and I just doopity doopity doo right through without stopping or stalling. Anyway, so, yep, get out the report card on this one. I'm still giving myself an A on it. Even it's like, still good, still good. Okay, so here we go. Okay, this is the end. This is the end for, the interruptions and stressors for the sixth hub. So I guess garbage in, garbage out means looking at things, being made to look at things, choosing to look at things that make you feel like shit. I mean, one of the things I think about social media is, like, and this will get into techniques and exercise, really curating what you look at so that you're actually still kind of, like, tied in with consciousness about, like, what makes you feel good and what makes you feel bad. I mean, that's the thing. It's not that it's, like, not to censor it, so it's like I don't look at, it's like I won't look at anything bad. It's just that it's like when you're looking at it, you're, like, there's, like, emotional, like, literacy happening, or, like, awareness. Because one of the things is, like, I guess is a final note on this I'll say is, like, I used to have a thing where I'd be scrolling through social media, and all of a sudden I'd notice, like, this is probably in techniques and exercises, by the way, spoiler alert, is that I'd all of a sudden just be like, "I don't feel great." Like, I feel kind of, like, shittier about myself or life, and I couldn't it would just be like a cloud cover came, and I'd be like, "When did," and then I'd scroll back. I'm sure you, like, I imagine you've done this too. I'm like, "When did that happen?" And there'd be a post about something, and it would be an interesting opportunity to sort of explore it, to be like, "Well, what is the thing about this that made me feel bad?" And kinda like, there's that. But, yeah, I guess it's, like, conscious use of it. I'm sure there'll be something in here that's a comment, whatever, blobbity blobbity blah. Anyhow, so, alright, that's a wrap. Next, we're doing adaptations and holding patterns for the sixth hub. So, we'll see. We'll see what we get out of what we get in here. How long is this? This one's long. This one's long. Okay, I'll tell you, this one's really good. Well, you can be the judge of whether it's good or not for you, but Adaptations and holding patterns. Sh And then so the holding patterns here are, like, kinda probably chef's kiss, probably the best, well, one of the best in the contenders. So the first is imaginary audience, which is so good. I remember the first time I heard about this, I was the age of this hub, and I was, like, knocked back on my chair because I was like, "Oh my god, that's exactly it." Which is, like, believing that you have an audience of people, like, that are watching you. We'll get more into it, and how that affects, like, the affect that we take on, and even our perception, and, like, and how we can, like, even imaginary audience, like, the notion that there are people judging us. It's like an externalization of, projection, kind of a weird thing. Anyway, we'll talk about it. It's probably not tomorrow, day after, or something like, or the day after that. So pattern recognition versus emotional literacy, another hot one. This is something we touch on in the first and second hubs in chapter 4 and 5, which is that if our emotional literacy, if our emotional capacity rather, is not developed, then we can tend to ascend into higher hubs before they're developed, which leads to some sort of like interesting outcomes. But one of the things with that can be being highly perceptive. And one of the things is like, that's, one of the things with adaptations is like to be like, these aren't just bad. Like I mean, this is, back to the thing that's like, well, what's the perfect version of this? It's like, there isn't one. I mean, it is what it is. It's like kind of forming something. And what we're trying to reach into is just feeling more fully alive and having more access to who we are in the sense of our authenticity. Um, and the feeling of that. Oof, the feeling of that. And then so, yeah, we'll talk about that. And then the shadows, this is like tour de force here, is denial, illusion, delusion, and biases. Um, yeah, I think the biases, and there's like, I go through the biases by hubs. Just get ready. Yeah, this is probably like one of the more expanded places for the shadow here, because, and then there's tips for critical thinking. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I like that. So 237, if you're following along in the book, tips for critical thinking. This gets good. It's really kind of like this is like a good exploration, and then there's some practical application stuff in here. But yeah, talking about bias. I mean, this is like one of the things, like similar to talking about how the second hub and its kind of, affiliation with the fourth chakra, which is like love and, yeah, which, love and connection and relationship, that's kind of commonly sort of just like, yeah, this is about, sort of like your romantic partner in a sense, that would be where the step here is like, no, this is actually about connection to your humanity. And like this kind of, it's like bigger, it's bigger. And here in the sixth hub, with its affiliation with the third eye, or the sixth chakra, ajna, the affiliation there is that, what you get often is this kind of thing, like it's about imagination and like painting your dreams and which, I mean, it is. See, I'm like invalidating this, like, so I'm interrupting it. But an extension of that being evaluation of how intuition can kind of pick up some dusty, musty, like sort of stowaways in the form of biases, that intuition, as pattern recognition is that the patterns that we have been programmed with, like the patterns that have been sewn into our perceptions from before we were conscious, are and sometimes that and afterwards as well, really benefit from just the presence of some conscious oversight and awareness of how biases can be impacting, that like one I think one of the things right now that's happening, and this is like where I think one of the places where religion, and we get into this in the next hub, becomes really dangerous, is like religion is this thing where it's like you don't have, it's like once somebody's like, this is my religious belief, it's like absolutely like hands off, like there's no, there's like there it's absolutely fully defensible. And this is like one of the loopholes we're in right now, is that just because something is like a religious notion, um, it's like, oh, it's your faith. I don't, it's like we should be able to have discussions, like like some sort of, consciously informed discussions about, these notions of faith specifically, as they relate to the dehumanization of other people. It's not that it's not to disrespect faith of others. It's just that, it's just that like right now, you see a lot of this where it's like, it creates just like a protection for really like we're thinking that really only kind of it like passes through, minimal critical exploration. Minimum, yeah. So it's like, because the thing about faith is like, I mean, I'm a person of a tremendous faith. I'm a person of tremendous faith. In what, you ask? Uh, let's not talk. We won't talk about it. It's just a person of tremendous faith. Oh my gosh, I'm laughing. Ding. Okay, we did it. Okay, so that's it. It's like the 10-minute later. That's the wrap. That's a wrap. Is like the 10-minute warning, possibly 20-minute warning in some cases. I love this. This is, I mean, look, this is it. Like this is just what the place I want to be. I was thinking yesterday about the Powerball, and I was like, if I won the Powerball, I wouldn't change anything about my day. I love my life. I love this. I love this. I love this. I love my process in this. I love being able to share this. I love thinking about it. I love feeling it. I love practicing it. Yeah. Yeah. And that there's nothing about, there's nothing external that can be offered up that can mirror it though, kind of makes life, like I will say that it's like this practice, one of the things about a regulated nervous system is that in many cases, it first of all gives you like more time in an interaction in a kind of like interesting way. Um, I don't know. It's like people it creates, sort of, I don't know, like just different types of outcomes. And I'm not even talking about being like pleasant in the way I was talking about earlier. I'm talking about this is like practicing this does shift the world as it relates to you. And in some ways, like it's made me a lot less nice. I'm not as tolerant of stuff that I think is bad for me, bad for my sense of self, that conflicts with my worth. So that makes me less pleasant to people. It's like my integrity Like, the thing about integrity is that the feeling of it is this divining rod, so when it's being compromised, it's revolting, so it becomes easier, like, once the adaptations are burned off, that the sense of it is just, like, you just don't wanna leave it. So anything that's departing from it is, like my, one more is as has been, like, kind of a love letter to my editor. Allison, um, used to do these like, she's really funny, like, she, would take all the letters in a word and come up just I mean, she's just, like, for fun. She'd take all the letters in a word and, like, scramble them and find new words. So if there was, like, a word that, just I can't even come up with because there's only one really strong example of this. And one day we got on a call and she says, "You do know that if you scramble up the words of the Parinama method, you get adaptation hammer." It's like it's funny that the term Parinama is so, like it's so weird how it landed. I'm not gonna tell exactly that story, but, like, the meaning of it, of a transformation that's both, like, practical and philosophical, um, yeah, it's such a weird thing that it would be that word. The but there's actually a connection to it that I don't think I've actually shared with anyone, but the other thing was that happened, there was a dinner, it was like a fancy dinner that I was told about where there were folks at the dinner who've been reading the book, and they were talking with other people at the dinner who didn't know what it was, and there was an Indian man there, Indian couple, I don't know, Indian man, and he said, "Parinama." Oh, he said, in an Indian he said, in a dialect, a modern, because it's Sanskrit, so it's like Latin. Um, he says, "Oh, there's a dialect where it means like, that's alive right now, that where Parinama means cause and effect." And I was like, "That works." That's yeah, and I was like, kinda honestly, at the time, I was like, "Oh my god, that's like, oof." Yeah. I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird name. Probably know that, but I don't know what that is. It's weird. Kinda just flew out of space and onto the page kinda thing. And it keeps working. It keeps working. There's other stuff with it where it's like adaptation hammer, practical and philosophical transformation, and then cause and effect. I have all these jokes I wanna make about, like, how it could turn out to, like, actually have another meaning that's terrible, but none of them are actually funny. So anyhow, all right. Well, I'm sending you so much love, Mira. I seeing your comment in real time is like basically feels I don't know, I've never smoked crack, but I think it's kind of similar to what people describe. I'm like really happy about seeing you. Yeah, any comments I will respond to, any interaction with this, I just really appreciate. Feels great to see any likes, comments, just any watches. It's like I love having you here with me. As mentioned, I love this so much, and I love you, and I will see you next time. All right, bye for now.